Welcome to the Talent Planner Show. I'm Steve Van Remortel, founder and CEO of MyTalentPlanner, and this show is to help leaders of small and medium-sized businesses win the battle for talent and increase profits by mastering the skill of talent planning and becoming talent planners in their organization. So if you're ready to increase your retention and your profitability through talent planning, you come to the right place. We got a very special guest with us today, so I look forward to diving into this with Brian. In this episode, we're going to talk about how do you get better at execution of your plan? How can lean principles enhance the execution of your plan? And so I'm really excited to have Brian Vandewater with us today. Brian and I met, how many years ago, Brian? 10, 15?
12, 13, something like that.
13 years ago. Brian was leading an organization and I was doing some work with that company, and ended up having a great outcome there. And so we've just stayed in touch. We're both kind of strategy nuts, and Brian and I are now working together as TPAs, talent planning advisors, and so forth. So Brian, just give us a really quick summary of who you are and your business, and then we're going to dive into how, you're helping companies with strategy, talent, and executing the plan and using lean to execute the plan across the organization. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your business, and then we're going to dive into that.
Sure. Appreciate it, Steve. Yeah, no, as Steve said, just on the connection, I consult in strategic planning, lean enterprise, which is using all of lean methodologies to change culture and talent planning. And Steve and I ran into each other about going on 2 years ago now. And we just happened to be talking. He told me about what he was doing with my talent planner, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is what's been missing from my business." Everything I do is spreadsheets and Word documents and all independent, not integrated. When I saw what he was doing with my talent planner, I got on board. We collaborated on some things to kind of work on the process, and so that's for me. It really just fit into those three elements of my business, and really gave me a platform I could tie it all together that I couldn't before. My background, I come out of industry, been in business, doing what I'm doing now for about 6.5 years. 3 different industries. One was in microbiology. I was a vice president leading 3 divisions in a robotics company for a number of years. And then a big portion of my business was in flexible packaging, converting, and label manufacturing. So 3 distinctly different industries. And then I decided to go out and take a swing at doing it on my own. And in the last 6.5 years, to date, I'm at 171,000 hours of capacity created for my clients, and over 59 million additional dollars of revenue through that capacity creation, and averaging over 10 times my cost for my clients. So that's a little bit of my background. On the lean side, I'll add in with it. I was lean before that became a term back in the mid 80s when total quality was just starting in the US. I got fortunate to work for a company that saw it coming. I raised my hand and got volunteered to train, and got trained on up through the advanced tools and the statistics side of like Six Sigma of lean. Now, Matt Deming, twice trained in Japan, twice I'm certified through Shingo Jitsu in Japan in lean. So I put all that together, and that's my business.
Awesome. So just at a high level, you help companies develop a strategy, and you help them get the right people to execute that strategy, and then you help them execute the plan. Our time together today is really going to focus on that, the execution piece, because I think one of the uniquenesses of your business and what I really value in you is using lean to execute the plan, right? So, I want to make sure our listeners take away a couple nuggets on how they can use lean principles to enhance the execution, because there's a saying in our world, that, strategy is the easy part, execution is the hard part. So let's start diving into that. So, let's say, you've worked with a company, the strategy is in place, it's in My Talent Planner, they've got their talent plans going, they're developing their people, they're holding their one-on-ones, and they're starting to execute the plan. Talk to us about how you use lean to help companies better execute their plan.
Yeah, that's a key to it, and it's been a recipe for my success as I started applying these tools and developing my approach back in the mid 90s. But I'll start with this, that strategy and lean are not often talked about in the same sentence.
Agreed,
People think of strategy by itself and lean by itself. And in my experience and what I help my clients with is that they are intrinsically linked together. And I'll walk that through. Strategic planning I talk about is the what. It's our objectives, it's our goals, it's the key things we need to do in our business. And the lean provides those methodologies of the how are we going to do it. So you get into, hey, we got to improve this process or reduce waste or increase revenue. Those are objectives. And then it often those plans stop at really getting deep enough into action plans down to individuals within given areas that can now execute those plans and link those two together. One of the ways we do that, I guess I'll share a statistic that about 50% of companies in North America create some form of strategic plan. And some are in people's heads, some are back of napkins, or some are very formally spelled out. But only 13% execute them. Back to what Steve said, you know, execution is the hard part. The Kaizen, which is a lean term, and strategic planning, the event, those are easy. And when you go through it, you think we're crazy when we say that because they're not easy. But after, that's when the rubber meets the road and that hard part of following through happens. And one example in this section I'll talk about, one of the things I did as a senior leader, president, vice president of companies, is I get very disciplined in how we approach achieving our objectives and executing our action plan once it's in place. So me personally, I'll use the last company I was president of. At 9:30 every Friday for a half hour in my calendar, in Outlook, was dedicated time to open up my strategic plan and review what's coming up, what are things that have been done, and then that prompts me to ask questions of my team. And so by giving those little soft nudges, hey, Steve, you got a key action coming up in the next 30 days. Have you started on it? Oh, I haven't yet, but it's on my to-do list to start next week. So you formally, as leaders, start to guide people and keep coming back to that. As you know, in my talent planner, it's called the North Star. What are we trying to do? What are those goals that we're trying to do? And you don't let your team get caught in the noise of the day or the fires, as a lot of people say we have. You keep coming back to the things that are strategic for your business to execute them. And that's one of the kind of a first layer of the methodologies that Lean helps provide in execution.
Yeah, and that's one of the areas that you and I really connected on, was now using technology to automate that execution of the plan, right? So all your action plans are in that software. You're getting notices, you know, 2 weeks or 2 days before they're due. And execution all of a sudden became, you know, real, like this is happening, you know. And that's one thing I tell leaders all the time is companies that use technology, in this case, MyTalentPlanner, just get more stuff done. If we can use that word, they get more stuff done than their competitors. Let's dive a little bit more into the lean principles here now. You know, let's give them some ideas on how lean is used in execution. So dive more into that, Brian.
Yeah, excellent. Excuse me. So again, I talked about lean being that how we get our what, which is the strategy done. And what it really gets to at the high level is lean is about rapid improvement. It's not about, like Six Sigma is a tool that is a lot of data gathering and statistics, and there are projects that are about reducing variation in a given process. Lean is really focused on the steps in the process and how you go from one piece to the next and make it stronger. So that's where the Kaizen comes in. And so that's the easy part, the Kaizen. Now this next piece is where the magic happens and where I focus with my clients. And I've got clients that 50% of them embarked on lean journeys in the past and they failed because this piece doesn't happen that I'm going to talk about now, is really creating visibility and awareness to any event that you do. And I'll kind of put lean, and in the back of your mind, keep thinking strategy actions as well, similar process. That you've got to come back to them and have visibility on one of the terms I use is daily management, that you've got key objectives that you're tracking and measuring every day. And I'll use back to from a Kaizen, I put in place with clients what I call a sustainability tracker. It's a 90-day tracking methodology that we measure an outcome out of any Kaizen. And at the end of the first week, we're measuring how do we do compared to what we proved we could do in the Kaizen. And more often than I'll say 50% of the time in the first 2 to 3 weeks, we might get green. We use green when it's good, red when it's bad, right? will be red. And I expect that. And I coach clients to expect you're going to get red, because what are you doing? You're trying to change habits, and people are creatures of habit, and we've got to change that and get people used to it. So by coming back, when we see red, we go back and ask what caused us not to be able to achieve that. And you audit or validate is another key takeaway in that sustainment process. You're validating that you're following your new process, or you're implementing your action plan and measuring the results. And you do that routinely, and you will hit barriers. You'll hit things that you didn't anticipate in any process. All processes are complex, and you can't solve everything you're going to run into in 1 week in a Kaizen. So when you see that, then you remove that barrier, and then you remove the next barrier, and you solve those problems. And after 90 days, my experience is 90 to 95% plus of every Kaizen, and I'm pushing probably 1,000 Kaizens in my life now. 95% or so of them are sustained using this methodology that you keep coming back to it till you get there.
Yeah. Give us a put you on the spot here a little bit, but give us a real life example of an event that you did that really helped the execution of the plan. Like, give us something we can get our arms around from a real example.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple quick ones. One of my clients, from a lean perspective, I met. When I met them, they said, "Oh, we don't need you. We do lean." And I started with coaching, and then got into strategy and redid their sales plan for their 10-year growth goal of doubling the business. And after we were successful doing a number of those things, I was asked to take a look at their lean process with an outside perspective. They never had an outside expert look. And so I came in, I saw a lot of opportunity. Fast forward, leaving out the details, they were buying a new printing press, a $1 million expenditure, and we created 5,200 hours of capacity in a single Kaizen. And if you do the math on that, that's roughly 3 full-time equivalents. So 3 operators to run a press. We created enough capacity, they canceled the PO, and we're able to drive that. This next example, and then both these get into that sustainment validation piece. This first company did very well. They achieved it and sustained it about 90 days. This second example I'm going to give, we did a setup reduction event in a company, and we came up with about over 60% reduction in changeover time across 5 pieces of equipment. And so it created thousands of hours of capacity, but they were struggling. They weren't following through with the validation protocol that I gave them and measuring the results afterward. They were not doing it half the time. And I kept working with them. I had calls with them every other week. And about a month and a half in, I finally stopped the meeting and I said, "Why are we here? You haven't brought the data and the things that we were supposed to be capturing last week to share how we're doing. So we don't have anything real to talk about." So I kind of took the next step. The chief operating officer was in this facility. There were 3 of them. And I said, "You got to give me 10 minutes a day. You've got to go out on the floor and you've got to look at the metrics that are at the machine. If they're not filled out, you just got to ask why and coach your leaders to do this." So I kept coaching them through that. It took about 5 months. That's the longest that it had taken to get where we did. But they finally did. They finally got to and exceeded the 60% improvement we achieved. And that was by last September. Fast forward January, I had a conversation with him. He said, "Brian, I got to tell you, this is the first time in the history of our company that every single manufacturing variance in all 3 facilities is positive." And he said, "Awesome. When we met you 8 months ago, every manufacturing variance was negative." And it came through getting them to go out there and keep going back. And until we do what we said we're going to do, you don't go to the next thing. You stay there and you get that done. When you've mastered that, then you go to the next thing. So that's a piece of how I'd help companies achieve it.
If we back that up a second, part of their strategy was to increase their efficiencies or something like, and then, so they developed a goal, or it's part of their strategy. Then you obviously help them make sure they got the right people in the positions to execute the strategy. And now you're executing it and you're doing this sustainability, this measurement. I just wanted to connect the strategy, talent, and execution dots.
Glad you did, because I just went right into lean. But yeah, their strategy, they had to reduce setup time, they had to reduce waste in the business, were key objectives from corporate, but they didn't know how. They were struggling, and we came in and this methodology helped them get there. We had a significant reduction in their waste as well. The physical waste, and I'll be talking about the 8 wastes of lean in a little while, but yeah, that it was tied off that strategy. So strategy again, the what, they didn't know the how. They were trying, they were talking about stuff, but it was a lot of talk because nobody knew what to do. And this lean gives us a methodology to uncover what are the opportunities that we're going to go into. And I guess maybe I'll jump in here, Steve, with the 8 wastes. I mentioned that. So in lean, it's the physical waste that we throw in a garbage can that everybody thinks about, but the rest of the 8 wastes are intellect, which is creativity, using your team, and it's all about the team, and that's that third pillar of this whole process is the talent. But overproduction, which is making too much before you need it, transportation, where you're moving things around multiple times, touching it more than once, inventory, like work in process, where you're waiting, and if you're waiting for one process to finish before you can start, or you're waiting for information, over processing, like this is one of the ones I see often that I coach companies through. A lot of companies through the history and course of events with quality end up having a quality sign off before they can run. And I coach them, and if you got the right people and right processes, you got 20-year people that say they should know what's good, trust them to run, still do your quality check, but don't wait. So that's one of the wastes, is waiting for over processing. And obviously then defects or rework in motion. When you see a lot of motion, if you've got to walk 20 feet to get the tool you need, that's a manufacturing example, but also relate it to the transactional side of your business, like your order processing, estimating, your sales process, accounting. All those processes have steps. And I did 3 accounting Kaizens last year. In the average, we cut out about 30% of the steps and the time that it took to process accounting paperwork, from receipt of PO to invoice. Order processing or customer service related things. I did one Kaizen last year. We created 2,800 hours of capacity out of a team of 8. And there was another client that had 14 customer service people. We created 3,800 hours of capacity in customer service through removing things like there was an area where they had to duplicate entering customer data in 2 places. We found a way to do it only once, and it would populate the other one. So at that time, times 14,000 orders a month times 12 months a year adds up to lots of time. Yeah. So that kind of gets at those pieces I think you're asking about.
So the 8 types of waste that you take out of the execution of a plan are intellect, overproduction, transportation, inventory, waiting, overprocessing, defects, and rework, which is what most people think about in motion. So right. I just wanted to restate that for the listeners, because there are a lot of different ways you can take waste out of the execution. Now, in your examples you gave, there was, some manufacturing companies, obviously you're dealing with. Do you do a lot of lean and helping professional service company or distribution companies taking waste out of their execution of their plan?
Yeah, I've done work with hospitals. I did work with an insurance company. I've done work with a school fundraising that it was kind of manufacturing-ish. But when I mentioned the front end processes, I've done work with a purely accounting firm. So yeah, the lean tools apply to those service industry based functions as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to add that we talked about giving a nugget to take away. So I mentioned the 8 wastes. Here's a call to action for the people who come on the podcast. Take those 8 wastes that we outlined and do this. Go into your operation, either manufacturing or go into an area of your business where you've got a lot of transactions happening. I've got a new client I'll be doing some work with in the next couple of months, and they've got their accounting, their customer service, and another admin position all kind of in a pod. You could go to an area like that and just watch what they do and listen to what they're doing and see, when they're on the computer, are they changing programs and do they have to wait for something? Look for those things, but look for the 8 wastes. It's called a waste walk. So you go and spend 30 minutes and just stand in an area and watch what's happening, and maybe ask a question if you're not sure what they're doing. It takes a little guidance to learn how to do it in the transactional processes, because a lot of it's on the computer. So you got to pay attention and see what they're doing. But if you go in manufacturing and do it, it's real evident. When I take leadership teams through this as a foundation to start a lean journey, this 30-minute exercise, we come out and the executives are like, wow, we had no idea. In 30 minutes on average, we find 25 to 30 of these waste categories that we're talking about here that are waste that are in their process. If we just have the ability to learn to look for waste and learn to see it, it's all around us every day, and there's money just waiting to be captured.
I'm assuming you walking into a facility, whoa. I'm assuming it becomes kind of a strategic illness for you. When I walk into a business, even as just a consumer, I start picking out things that strategically aren't working real well. You know, like,
Yeah.
does this person I'm dealing with know the strategy of the company and that they're unique or different, or are they selling vanilla? You walk into a business and it's like, there's waste,
Yeah.
waste, right?
Yeah, I
So
joke with clients and tell them, excuse me, most people have seen that movie, The Sixth Sense, and there's that little kid that says, I see dead people. And I said, when we're done working together, I'm going to ruin you for life because you're going to see waste everywhere. You're going to see waste like you see dead people. You're going to see it.
So let's dive into that waste walk. Okay. So
Yeah.
I'm a leader of an SMB company, could be a manufacturer, could be a professional company. And tell me, like, just coach me a little bit on, I'm going to take a waste walk through my business. Coach me a little bit on like how to do it. What am I looking for?
Yeah. Yeah. So what you do is, and if someone wants, they can reach out to Steve Ryer with my information at the end, and I'll give you a form. But take a clipboard, write those 8 wastes that we just shared down on a clipboard. And every time you see, motion, or you see someone picking up parts and moving it from one place to another, that's transportation. Write down, hey, they moved part from the end of the machine to the warehouse. Literally, I've seen things like this, Steve, where someone was moving, and there was a process where they moved inventory that was going out from the job they're on and bringing in inventory for the new job. They literally had to go, it was 850 feet to where the stuff was stored. And they'd pick up a pallet jack and they'd wheel this thing down, drop it off, get a new one, come back. They did it 8 times. It took 20 minutes. And we saw that, well, why don't we have it staged? Things you start to ask, why don't we have it staged closer? Sometimes there's reasons you can't, but you look for that, but you just record it. So you just write down what you see, and don't get too hung up on which waste it is. Sometimes it might be 2 or 3 that you could say, hey, it could be over processing and motion. Pick one. It's not so much which waste it is, but that you see the waste and capture that idea. Those wastes you capture at that point, now you can bring it back and sit down and say, hey, what can we do to reduce or eliminate these wastes? And some of them are simple. I did one with a large client of mine, and at the end of this waste walk, the vice president of operations couldn't sit still. He was like, oh my gosh, I got to do something about this. And after we finished the training, he went out into the area that he watched, and they changed a couple things right then because he saw that we could fix this right now. So many things are that simple. They're just do it. Others, it leads into, you need the more formal lean major Kaizen kind of process to make a whole scale process change. But you'll find things, I'm telling you, you'll find things that you could change right away. That, like, here's another one. I had a client that the material handler is unloading trucks. When they unloaded a truck, they had to print out the bill of lading. They had to go to the supervisor's office that was 100 feet away to print it. So they had to print on their computer, then to walk down there to get it, walk back times every bill of lading they got. We ended up getting a printer and put it out by his desk. And it saved all that time. So you'll see those things and you'll go, wow, why don't we just get a printer? It's $300. Boom, done. You save all that time. So that's the high level how you do it. Just go look, record it, and then take action on a few that you can and capture the others for something where you need a bigger process.
Yeah, and one of the things that I value about our partnership too is that when I look at execution, I think about people, and I think about technology. And obviously, MyTalentPlanner is one of our ways that we help companies make technology more efficient, make accountability easier, and a lot more clarity. But from your perspective, which I value, it's that lean side. And I ran a manufacturing company. We're very much in the lean, but it's not one of my expertises. And so that was what was cool about, when you and I got an opportunity to sit down and get to know each other. It's like, man, we're both bringing different perspectives on how to be better at execution. Mine was by building a technology that automates all of it. Yours was by implementing lean principles. And we've come together to build this model that does it all now. And so that's super cool. And And so I value that about our relationship because my mentality is how do we get as much done as we can in a shorter period of time, right? But I'm not thinking about taking out waste. That's just not how I was trained in the organizations that I ran. Somebody else did that. Let's put it that way. So I value that about our perspective. Let me think. Is there any other areas that in any other nuggets that you would want to share on how to use lean in the execution of a plan? I mean, you've clearly brought some great ideas with the waste walk and Kaizens. Any other areas that leaders should think about in getting better at execution using lean principles?
Yeah, the other one I think I'll share today is it's called daily management, or a process is called Gemba, and I'll leave out a lot of the details of it. But basically, I'll start with this. It's about you got to have good metrics. You got to have good measures in your business. So coming out of a Kaizen, there's going to be some metric to measure to know if you've achieved what you proved you could get in the Kaizen. Like if we do a order processing Kaizen and we cut out 6 steps that save 2 minutes per order, you have to validate and audit that. Are we following that standard work, the new steps to change that habit? And the daily management or Gemba process helps us do that. So again, that sustainability metric, that's each week for 90 days, you measure it till you're green and solid. But another way I say where this foundation comes from is you can't manage what you don't measure, right? Everybody's heard that term. And so having the right metrics, and then Gemba is where you might have, let's say, in a business that's, let's just pick a business, say $10-15 million revenue business. You might have 25 to 30 metrics that are key in your business. It might be waste, it might be on-time delivery, it might be productivity by each department, it might be number of orders entered per CS or PS another day. Yep. And then in that as well, one of the things that I do where I link lean in and our Gemba board is the headers are all the things coming out of our strategy. So our key objectives are the headers when we do a Gemba board. And it can be electronic or on a physical wall with all the key metrics. But lean enterprise implementation is one of them. In my talent planner, what I do is I make that one of the objectives. That's in there. And then under that, you start building your priorities for Kaizens and the areas you're going to go after. So that's why lean fits so well in this technology, because it just becomes one of your key objectives and how to manage it.
And then oh, sorry.
Yep.
I was just going to add to that the other thing that we're really building out to be a really strong feature is the metrics. So there'll be strategic metrics for the company, and then there'll be department metrics, and maybe part of operations or distribution or something has the lean metrics in their departments, and then we have individual metrics that also may contain some of those lean principles. And so we're connecting individual to department to strategic metrics. And so all these metrics that you're talking about aren't on an Excel document. They're not in one person's office, right? Anybody that logs into the MyTalentPlanner can see these metrics at any time. And so it's super powerful. So I just wanted to add to that not only you have a goal to get better at execution and to take cost and waste out, but all the metrics are there for everybody to see how we're doing.
It's linking. You can see all of it at any given time by any sort level. But with Gemba, the other piece I want to add, and then we can kind of wrap up that concept, is what it does for you. I mentioned daily management. So the process is that once a day, every day you go look at your key metrics with your key leaders that are responsible for them, and it's a 10-minute meeting, maybe 15 minutes tops. You're not solving problems. But those metrics become this, and this is very important. They become leading indicators to when you're going off track somewhere. And by looking at them every day, you can see it in day 12 of the month. And you say, hey, Steve, your metric is over the target. What's happening? And many times they know the answer when the process gets going. People know that they see it too. They need to have answers, because I, as a leader, I'm not wanting you to come in and go, hey, I don't know. I actually have my leaders put the metric up, so they update it, so they know I'm going to ask about it. And that's a little bit of that subtle accountability piece. But when you can't solve it, then you capture it offline, and then it becomes an action item that needs to be answered by the next day. And that really gets you in front of it, that nothing gets out of control, that the month ends, financial finish 10th day of the month or something, and then something's off. And like say labor's percent of sales is off, and they go, what happened? And everybody goes, I don't know. Too much time's gone by. But if you use this right, you see it. You'll see it early in the month, and you can do something about it. One of the companies I led for 5 years, we never missed the net income target for the month, because with those leading indicators, I could make adjustments. If I saw we were off on revenue or some expense was going high, I would pull back on discretionary spend, or I would shift something to make sure that I was still managing the bottom line. And it becomes such a powerful leadership tool that you take that strategy, which is, I guess, that Gemba board, everything at the high level is all our key strategy objectives. And then all the things around it and those key indicators, you're staying connected to it every single day. And you're multiple ways I'm driving that follow through and commitment to sustain and implement and validate what we do with all these processes that Lean brings to help make it visible.
Yeah, and what you just said is really how I look at the talent component. So talent planning is working upstream to resolve your people issues or people related issues before they impact the business. The lean measurement that you just explained, they're leading indicators. We're out in front of it. It's not a reactive approach. It's a very much a proactive approach to execution. It's not how did we do last month? It's how did we do yesterday, right? It's how are we doing today? So it's very much working upstream on our measurements so that we can impact performance and execution today, not be reactive to it and do it a month later, like you said, and we don't even remember why it happened that way. So I love that connection of, being more proactive on the talent component, but also being more proactive on the execution component by being very in tune with the metrics, which again are all provided to you through technology, red, green, yellow, whatever. And so that was a super cool analogy there between talent planning and execution.
Yeah, and I'll add this to it with my words to what you just said as well. Again, strategic planning is the what, lean is the how. Talent and people, that intellect and team that's the glue. That's that link that puts them together. Without it, you got nothing. Yeah. I am all about team. I believe that I've done 7 turnarounds in my career in industry, and in them, I didn't have every team with the best technical experts in the field. But what we did is we built a team. We put people in the right spots. We played to strengths. We got good at execution. And you can take, I'll kind of say this kind of flipping, you take that ragtag team of people and you start to build them and you help them learn to work as a team and really towards that common goal. And you develop that culture of execution and discipline to do what we say we're going to do. You're going to win every time. The teams win. I had a client just recently share this with me. He had a department and there were a couple people in it that I said, those people are probably not long-term. I would get rid of that person now. And there's another person that a year from now, you got to figure out if you can keep him. He was a great operator, but he was also so hard to work with and resisted what we did. Flat out said, I'm not going to do that, that kind of thing. And I said, and he's like, but he's the best. And I said, I'm telling you, when you either get people to get on board, and if you can't get them there, if you lead, coach, and train everything you can do to do that, you get them out. It will change your team. And he shared with me a few months ago, he said, man, it was just one of the leadership meetings. He said, when Brian told me that I was going to get rid of this person, I should get rid of that person, I'm thinking, does he know what that would do to us?
I'm going to get rid of Brian.
Yeah. And he said, man, I didn't get it at first, but when we started doing it, and he said, I see what he says now. But he is absolutely right. We got a different team. He's got 2, 3. Well, one person's been in the role for like 3 years. 2 are less than a year, and then one real experienced person. And all of their variances they had one guy that would have efficiencies in the 90s. The other 3 were down in the 80s and 60s. They're all in the 90s now with 2 people that are only in the business for a year. And he's like, wow, it works when you build a team and you communicate and you help grow and you commit to do what you say you're going to do. You follow through, you audit that we're following standard work in our processes and measure it. I say magic happens,
Yeah. So simplifying what we just talked about here as we wrap up, strategy is the what, talent is the who, and execution is the how.
Yep.
And that's what you do. That's how you simplify it. And we use technology to help companies execute all that. That's awesome. As we wrap up here, what would be, now it may be the waste walk that you talked about already, but what's your one recommendation you make to any SMB leader that's that's trying to improve the execution in their organization. Is it something you already mentioned, or would you want to share something different?
I think I'll go back to, you mentioned the waste block. That's something that's going to open your eyes to the possibilities. So that's something to do. But the takeaway for execution is find the right ways to measure successful execution. And then I'll say it in different words than I did before, but recognize yourself as a leader and also with your team that the excuse I hear in almost every company I go into in some form or another that we're fighting fires all day long. We don't have time to work on this. And get in your mindset that there are really no fires. They are day-to-day noise that we let take over our day by not managing it and saying, I'm going to put my strategic actions into my day and they are going to be the most important thing I do. It might be twice a week for an hour. Most strategic plan initiatives aren't something you got to spend 3 weeks on. They're bites of time. So do that. Commit yourself and your team to take dedicated time on strategic action implementation. If it's a lean initiative that you're going to focus on that follow-up action to sustainment metric, that type of thing, and talent, spend time on talent in the tool. One of the great things, and it was a weakness I had, I didn't have any good way to really manage talent in my process before I started working with Steve in MyTalentPlanner, is your one-on-ones. I did it all offline and just took notes, and I coach all my clients to do one-on-ones, and some, if not weekly, every other week, half hour, make it short and simple, but do it, that communication, and then you get actions that come out of that. And with MyTalentPlanner, you put it right in there. But it's really that piece. Don't let the noise become your barrier to strategic execution. Strategic means it's the most important. So spend time on that. The fires will still be there, quote unquote. And I use this example, and to wrap up is, I ask people, do you ever go on vacation? And everybody says, yep. And I said, ever for a week at a time? They say, yep. I say, when you come back in a week, is the place still here and running? Yep. So don't tell me you can't take an hour twice a week to work on something strategic.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah, dropping the mic. So, Brian, if someone wants to get a hold of you, learn more about how you do strategy, talent, and execution using the lean principles, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, great. You can check me out on my website. It's SPL, so S is in Sam, P is in Paul, L is in Lima, consulting LLC.com is a website. And my email is brian@splconsultingllc.com, or my phone number is area code 414-588-3008. And if that doesn't work, call Steve. He'll get you to me.
Yeah, I know how to get a hold of him. Hey, really appreciate you taking some of your time today to talk about something that was kind of off my radar screen for a while here, and bringing lean back into execution. And, the cool part about execution is, when you're good at it, is you execute a sprint, a 4-month sprint, let's say, and you look back and you're like, holy cow, did we get a lot done, right? Mm-hmm. And then you celebrate that with your team and the organization. And then what do? You set the goals for the next 4-month sprint, and you're off and running again. And you do that 3 times in a year, and that just became a record year or a kick-ass year for our business. So I really appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. Yeah.
I have one more comment. I just thought that what that does is, as you do this and you get better at it, and we're going to stub our toes as we get going and really get good at executing. What happens is, when I said before, people are creatures of habit and change is hard. When you start changing the culture of a company to one of execution, strategy, and sustainment, a couple years into that journey, it's the norm. People expect change and bring it to you to say, hey, we got to change this. So you get that positive momentum that comes out of creating that culture. And I just wanted to add that in there, because it gets easier and easier, and it starts to just be, this is what we do. When you come to work here, this is what you expect. We're gonna execute what we say, and then we're gonna look for the next thing and keep going.
Awesome. Love the passion and the energy, man.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about strategy, talent, and execution, you're an SMB, a small and medium-sized business, head over to MyTalentPlanner.com. Reach out to me at Steve@MyTalentPlanner. We just want to be, and I know, Brian, this is where Brian's heart's at too, we just want to be a resource to help you accomplish what you set out to do. And, our objective is always we want to teach you how to fish. We don't want to necessarily fish for you. And so it's really about helping you get the systems in place and then letting you take it from there. And so let us be a resource for that. If you like today's episode, it'd be awesome if you'd give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, or wherever you listen to your episodes. So we'll see you next time on the Talent Planner podcast. And always remember, those who plan profit. Thanks a lot, Brian.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Bye, everybody.